So why have level 1s changed and why are they starting to be a thing? And again, I haven't watched a lot of the EU expansion or the IM, so I don't know what the level 1s look like in that game, but as far as like OGN and the LPL games, level 1s are, there's a clear difference between level 1s of this season and level 1s of past seasons. And so the first and foremost, like when explaining this to my players, you had to explain like the theory of what you're doing at level 1 and why you're doing it. So the idea behind level 1s initially, like why do we invade? Why would you even go in there level 1? Like what are you hoping to accomplish? You have like kind of two different options. Option 1, you have a ridiculously strong level 1 team. Like you're just fucking stacked. You got like a Braum, you got like a Jason there, like you're ready to go. I don't know, Lucian, Caitlyn, like you're ready to like knock some bitches out. And so you're just looking to kill someone. I don't know, like Blitzcrank, pull some shit. So that's like option 1, is you just want like the kills, but like more often than not, it's about the information that you gather. So what information are you gathering? Because the whole point of level 1s is like, especially in OGN, is like players just run in and they drop a bunch of wards. So like what is the purpose of that information and what are they looking for? A, jungle starts. So why is it important to know where the enemy jungler is starting? The reason why, and like specifically talking to last season, the jungle rotation was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And what I mean by jungle rotation at 3 minutes and 30 seconds is that the jungler would have completed both his buffs, so he'd be double buffed up and effectively looking for a gank. Now obviously this has changed in the newer jungle. Jungle rotations are slower. Level 2 ganks are actually much more feasible, but there are still some junglers who have been left untouched, like Pantheon and Vi, as far as their level 3 gank or their level 2 gank is concerned. But it's always just like, the reason why we want to know where the enemy jungler starts is because if you can track where the enemy jungler is, obviously you can prepare for ganks. So that's the number one thing. We want to figure out where he's starting in his jungle so we can help start where we're going to track his movements. The second, excuse me, sorry. The second aspect is the lane swap, which is where, you know, wards like, oh, that's nice, it makes my bigger, or wards like this come in, like when someone wards down here, or likewise when they used to ward here, I used to call it like the lane swap check ward. And it's effectively just making sure that you're getting the 2v2 or the 2v1 matchup that you want. So like in the previous season, you invaded level 1s because you wanted to find out where your jungler was starting, make sure that you get the 2v2, possibly like murder someone. Like those were the three things. Now in the current jungle, it's even like worse. And by worse I mean like there's even more information. The information is these things. So this is Gromp and minis. And why are Gromp and minis? Specifically to this side of the map, which Riot is addressing, which is why this is going to be outdated information relatively soon, because Riot is changing the spawn time to, I believe, like 2 minutes for these camps. And the issue is because bot lanes have begun taking these smaller camps like Gromp and mini golems and taking an EXP advantage into the lane. So not only are you invading now to check where the enemy jungler is starting, to make sure that you're not getting a lane swap, but you're also invading because you're checking to see if the bot lanes are taking an EXP advantage, because you don't want to get cheese level 2. An example of this, mini golems are much more flexible because you have more versatility in how you change the experience on it. So if one person gets all of the experience of the larger mini golem, or the stone bros, krogs, whatever they're called, it's 1 creep to level 2. So think about this. Say you're running a Alistar, I don't know, an Alistar whatever lane. Let's say Alistar Graves. Okay? You could theoretically choose in your playstyle that we're going to give the larger Stone Bro EXP solely to Alistar. Say he's running a Targons. So Alistar walks into lane, slaps the creep wave, procs his Targons, instantly gets level 2, and all ins, like in the first 5 seconds of the lane. Like that can fuck someone up if you don't understand like what's coming. So that's why it's kind of like important to do that. Gromp is, if you split the experience evenly, like 50-50, it's 6 creeps to level 2, or if you give the experience solely to one person, they immediately get level 2. We've been kind of testing of like which one has been better. I've seen both instances. I think it's situational to the lane that you pick. But the reason why like Gromp is not as good as mini golems, or Gromp is scarier, partly the fact that Gromp is ranged. So I have to like back up now and explain this theory. When talking to my jungler, because now they've changed it so when you smite, you know, the certain camps, you get like a certain bonus to your clear time. The camp that the jungler really likes to start, doesn't have to, but like would prefer, like the best case scenario is to smite Gromp, because it helps low sustain junglers clear their jungle. So theoretically, blue side is stronger than purple side because your jungler would get to start Gromp. So he gets his Gromp start, which means he gets his really healthy sustained jungle start, and your bot lane also gets to take the Stone Bros EXP into the lane. Now, what I mean by like blue side being stronger than purple side is because like theoretically this is exactly the best case scenario for both the bot lane and the jungle, whereas on purple side your jungler is competing with his perfect Gromp preferred smite, and your bot lane competing for the EXP to take into the bottom lane. Now of course teams have solved that and they've just started here, but you know, it's the jungler, like best case perfect scenario, he gets to smite Gromp. So what a lot of teams do, and pretty much is like guaranteed every single time from purple side, is that they'll invade purple side, or they'll do a late invade where like the bot lane will stay here and they'll get like a ward here, and they know that the enemy bot lane is going to be doing this, so they'll go in and they'll interrupt it to make sure it's like, hey, we're not taking Gromp because our jungler wants to start Gromp, like your jungler is starting Gromp, so no one gets the EXP into level 2. Now, why I had to backtrack when I started talking about Gromp and like why Gromp is kind of worse than Stone Bros, not just based on like the side that you're starting and if you're competing with your jungler or anything like that, is the fact that Gromp is ranged. So why that's important, because I just talked about how like purple side will go and invade the enemy bot side to like stop them from doing the Stone Bros and like fuck them up. These guys, they have to like crawl after you at like 0.4 miles an hour, so you can just like disengage from them, whereas like because Gromp is ranged, it's much harder to get off of that leash. So like say I'll show you an invade that happened to us. Say you're blue side, what teams will do and what has happened to us is they assume that purple's going to invade, so they go in underneath and they ward right here. So they ward our Gromp and then they sit in this bush. When we start to do our Gromp, because they see us in vision, they'll delay invade in on us on Gromp, and it's so much scarier because we're already taking Gromp damage, but then to clear like the Gromp danger zone is like really frightening. So you have to kind of understand like the basic of these camps before you can like really start doing some really cool adaptation as far as level 1s are concerned. Should pull this chat back up. Does that mean that red side would? Yes, that's pretty much what has been my opinion, is like red side. Okay, I'm going to use an example from our scrims because this is when we really started to examine level 1s. I'm not going to reveal what team it was though, but effectively it went like this. The assumption is that purple side is always going to invade or lane swap. Why is that the assumption? Because blue side, as we said, has like the theoretical best case scenario start, and you cannot let your bot lane, like unless you want to cripple your bot lane, you can't just give them this for free. So when we play purple side, and again, this information is changing, so teams, if you want to try to use this against us, it's being changed because Riot's changing the start times. We made sure that every time we were on purple side, we took a really strong 3v3. And what I mean by that is a really strong bot lane and a really strong jungle, because we knew that we were going to have to contest for the mini golems, that we couldn't just like give them away. So if we're working under the assumption that purple side is always going to invade because it has to contest the mini golems, and so it has to invade to get the vision down to contest mini golems, a team did this to us. A team was on blue side, they ran in, let me show you where they warded, which was like genius. So they initially ran into their own jungle and they warded their own red. Why did they ward their own red? Because they're under the assumption that we're going to invade because we're purple side and we want to contest. They want to make sure that they know if we're invading just to place down wards and to leave, or if we're invading and we're actually staying into their jungle, because obviously they don't want to like walk back into it. So they ward there, and then they hide in this brush, and then they like wait. And the only reason I know that they hide in this brush, because they don't have Baron replay, is because we ran into them in this brush in the second time trying to figure out what they were doing. But they hide in this brush, and then they walked out over here as soon as we like came in. We warded everything and we backed, and then they walked forward and they warded our Gromp and this area. And as soon as we saw that they warded the Gromp, we were like, damn, shit, we gotta get out of here. So we stupidly like went back to lane. So they had a ward on our Gromp, so they could see that our jungler didn't start that side of the jungle and that our bot lane wasn't taking any sort of EXP advantage. So from this information, they went into lane and they immediately started pushing. And we're like, why the fuck would they do that? They warded our Gromp and they didn't take mini golems. Like, they had the advantage to just like take an EXP advantage. What we didn't know is their goddamn jungler started mini golems, ran up, stole our blue, knowing that our jungler started on the other side, and then level 2 ganked us. And the reason why they started immediately pushing the wave was to create a slow push for us, like back in the favor. So when we got ganked, we were right here to like a level 2 Jarvan gank, and we got double killed and the game was over from there. But like, it's these really cool adaptations about like how you use this this information, and like that only happened because they were working under the assumption that we were already going to invade. The second time, like when we figured it out, they still had this warded and they were standing in there because they were trying to pull, like in the finals when Samsung White faced Starhorn Royal Club, and that one game where Royal Club really got smashed. It's because Samsung White knew that Starhorn Royal Club was going to invade and placed a ward right here and then hid in this brush, and when Starhorn went in and stood right here, Samsung White like positioned themselves perfectly to collapse down on Starhorn. That's effectively what they did to us in these scrims. They warded their red. We went, invaded, stood on the ward, they stood in this bush, and they just demolished us. So that's that aspect of it. I'm trying to think, there was one more thing that I really wanted to talk about with it. I wish I wasn't so scattered. Was it Team with Koreans? It was. Oh, I remember. I wanted to talk about, I was watching the Jin Air versus KT game because I was watching OG in preseason to figure out what they were doing for their level 1s to kind of get some ideas. This would have been so fucking brilliant. It was the first Jin Air versus KT game. KT was purple, Jin Air, let me just write it. Jin Air was here and KT was purple side. This is what happened. Again, purple side has to invade every single time. Jin Air, or excuse me, KT goes in and they ward here, here, and here. Now, when they do this, again, at first I was like, why the fuck would they ward like this? This is like the lane swap ward. The reason why they warded this is because KT knew going into this that they were going to stay and that they were going to take the red buff. That they weren't just coming in to gather information, that they were actually going to, because they had a really strong level 1, that they were going to fight for the red buff, and so they wanted to set up the best possible ward to see when Jin Air was coming from like all angles. So that's why that ward was there, not necessarily to check for the lane swap, because I believe it was a Graves Thresh lane versus like a Lucian Braum lane, so both lanes are like really strong. So they didn't care about that, but they just wanted to get as far out as possible. So the thing is that Jin Air was set up in a 5-point, and a 5-point effectively means that everyone is covering a jungle entrance, and so you can see when people come in if you're 5-point, but you can't see if people are still in there. That's the one really scary thing about 5 points, and I'll cover that after this, of kind of like how the nature of 5 points have changed because of this mini golem Gromp shit. But Jin Air is set up like this in a 5-point, so they see KT come in, they all back off, they know that there's something going on in this area. Captain Jack is standing right here. He immediately steps forward and he wards the Gromp area and he backs from the jungle to reset his position. He goes home. Likewise, on the other side of the map, Rumble steps forward with Lee Sin and he wards the mini golems. So now, in response, Jin Air has warded both starting points of the jungle to kind of figure out what's going on. This is where Jin Air makes the mistake that, if they hadn't made the mistake, would have probably been one of the most amazing adaptations of level 1s. This is what happens. Captain Jack pings and he then walks along this line, and he isn't spotted by this ward, but he pings it because it was seen by the tower, so he knows that the ward's right here. He walks around this ward and he stays like this. If Jin Air, after they had warded this, had all reset their positions, because they had a pretty decent level 1 team, I'm assuming that they made the call that they just couldn't fight the 5v5, but if they had all backed after they got their wards down, reset their position, and followed Captain Jack, they could have assumed that Try wasn't warded, because who the fuck wards Try? Like, when you make this invade, come back in through here and, like, contested the 5v5 or did a delayed invade on their own red buff. You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, the mid laner for KT had already left, as well as the top laner, and they could have gotten, like, a 4v3 kind of situation. I don't know, I think a delayed invade would have been, like, amazing. Instead, this is what happens. Captain Jack spends his time, he, like, secret agent man, like, highs along this wall, isn't caught out by this ward, and he's, like, pinging in here. His fucking support just is, like, DUI, just, like, drunk driving all the way through this goddamn ward into lane, and fucking Rumble, the top laner for Jin Air, and their jungler, start Gromp. And so, like, they don't even go here. Like, you had two options. You could have either done a delayed invade to contest your own red buff and try to get a kill, or you could have immediately switched over and attempted to trade red buffs. They don't do either. They do Gromp, they get 3 buffed, they lose the game. It was really awkward. How far back can I go with this? Oh, pretty far back. Okay. So you really enjoy it. Right, 5 points. So here's how the nature of 5 points have changed. So again, like a typical 5 point, this is like a purple side 5 point, is kind of like this. Again, you cover all of the entrances into your jungle. Putting a ward right here is really useful because then you can see if people are coming in through like this. The way 5 points have changed, and you saw this in the Demacia Cup, is actually just very, very basic, but it kind of means a lot. And this is how they've changed. Okay, so people will set up their wards through trinkets or whatever, basic 5 point like that, but they won't use the last trinket, they'll actually hold it. And then the bot lane, a lot of times, will actually guard this ramp, and the reason being, like, if you want to do a 5 point from purple side, because we kind of talked about, like, purple side needs to invade, but for whatever reason, if you want to do a 5 point from purple side, they'll guard this ramp, and if they see anyone pressuring in, they'll kite backwards, and they'll make sure that they get a trinket on the actual buff. And kind of going back to what KT did to Jin Air, the reason being is because you have to make sure that they're actually in the jungle doing the buff, because theoretically the enemy team could just run in, invade all of your shit, or ward all of your shit, and then back in a brush, reset their position. And if you have like a basic 5 point, this is what you see. You see someone run in, but you don't see them, you don't know if they're still in here unless they exit back out through one of these wards. And so you kind of have to make a very serious guess, and especially if like a team has a stronger level 1, if they're still in here or if they've all gone home and are now immediately running to their own blue because you've made the assumption that you're going to trade blue buffs. And see, that's when shit gets really scary, because all of your trinkets have been used in your 5 point, so you don't have any way to like secure yourself. I mean, you could theoretically like stand in a bush as 5 and try to catch them when they come back in, but like this is why you almost have to hold the last ward and make sure that you place it on the buff to make sure that they stay in there and they don't kind of like back and try to fuck you elsewhere. Now of course then you can like go even deeper in Inception with this, and if you're like a team that, well, they think that I'm going to back into yours, but they warded this, so what we're going to do is instead of, we're going to assume that this is warded, so they go and they stand in like the wolf pit or something and back. But you know, once you've gone that level of deep and trying to like mind fuck the enemy opponent, you deserve to win. At that point I would just roll over and give up. I'd pretty stop playing strats and deeper thought processes, and the thing that keeps me so interested. Yeah, let's take some epically coordinated level 1s and solo queue strats. So that's like the theory of level ones. I'm very happy that's Riot is changing the Stone Bros and the Gromp to like different timers, because that shit's obnoxious as fuck, but we'll see how it goes from there. And that's like, the main point is it's important to like understand, like this whole conversation was just birthed from the idea of why do we invade, just that question of why are we invading, what is the purpose of coming in here, what are we trying to gain access from. And like this is what I try to teach my team, is like I don't want to just give them the answers. Like I don't want to give them like a play and say like this is your play. I try to teach them like the fundamentals of it, because obviously the game is going to continuously change. Like patches will change, champions will change, but if they understand why is something OP, why are we doing this, what is the thought process behind it, that's when they can like do crazy shit like this adaptation that Jin could have done. Like they would be able to think of that on the fly, because a play like that would have been amazing, but there's no way the coach had that in the playbook. He's like, oh, if you turn to page 34, code blue, this is the situation, boys, this is what we trained for. You can't prepare for that. So you just have to have like a discussion with your players so they understand the concept behind it. You recommend places where I can get some VODs, high-end matches to watch the individual lanes and not just usual spectator point of view. Yeah, Korean solo queue, bot lane, one kind of can I have mod. If you want to give players, oh, I remember I was going to show the VOD of the, whoops, I have the trophy virus, it's pretty obnoxious. Deft creating a fast push tutorial. I remember watching this video and I linked it to a guy. Damn. Huh. That's frustrating. Okay, well, let me just... So the concept is, and like the most basic way to do it, is the creeps are coming in, your creeps are coming in. What you do, and your blue side, so this is you. You walk into the creep wave, and obviously don't do this in a 2v2 lane because you'll get shit on. I should have done it up here. In fact, let's do that. I do not want confusion here, because that will... This is what Frostwind said to do, and I got fucking wrecked. Okay, you. The reason why is it's a 2v1, so he can't just like murder you for taking that much creep damage. Walk into the creep wave, get the creeps to focus fire you, pull them back into your own wave. Because these creeps have focused on one target, that means all of their little pellets will then start targeting the same creep in your wave, which means that they'll push your wave down faster. The thing is it's a 2v1 lane swap in this situation, which means that the enemy champion can't like go and affect this. So technically speaking, you have created a fast push for purple side, for your one person over there pushing into your wave, but because he can't like do anything about it and you have complete control over the wave, you kind of freeze it about right here, and then slowly your waves start pushing into it, and eventually you get like 3 waves right here that push into a tower, and your jungler is like, what's up, bro? And then that person is dead. How has chaos shot calling been regarding level 1s or overall, or someone? Okay, so level 1s, we went over all of this with like the team. We had like a whiteboard and we like drew on it. As far as like shot calling level 1s, it kind of goes like this. We made 3 basic strategies for them. So we have a blue invade, which is like a delayed invade, and again it's about doing that. We have a blue 5-point. Excuse me, it goes actually like this. And then a blue lane swap, which goes like this. Because when you have a lane swap, you have a 3v2 And where these numbers are coming from is your bot lane plus jungler, and then the jungle plus top lane. And so since you have a 3v2, it effectively cuts the map instead of like this, which is the normal way the map is cut. When you do a lane swap, the map gets cut like this. So this becomes yours, this becomes yours, just because you have a number advantage on this side. The enemy jungler's like, well fuck, I don't want to just die, so he just goes and he takes your shit. So those are our 3 standard plays. So we actually like made a playbook and we told everyone like, this is what you're warding, this is where we go. But again, we've had this discussion, like I've talked to them, like this is the adaptation, this is what could have happened, so they understand the theory behind it. So if the enemy team is doing something strange, they can hopefully like identify what needs to